Equity and Inclusion Office, McMaster University, followed by Will Rowe.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the protocol for gender identity and gender expression. My name is Michelle Poirier, and I am here on behalf of McMaster University's Equity and Inclusion Office. Our office is available to all staff, students, and faculty members who have concerns related to discrimination, harassment, and sexual violence. Our office also provides training and works on a range of equity-related projects, including a trans inclusion project. This project is being implemented with members of transgender and gender non-binary communities on campus. I would like to begin by acknowledging that Hamilton is on lands protected by Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and the traditional territory and waters of diverse First Nations, including those nations people who identify as Two-Spirit. I also want to recognize the uncompensated work that is being done by transgender and gender non-binary activists in our community, many of them who are in the room today. I want to thank everyone who has been compelled to share their personal stories in the hope of preventing discrimination, harassment, and violence by those who would target them because of their gender identity or gender expression. Harassment and discrimination against transgender and gender non-binary members of our community is a violation of their legally protected human rights under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Human rights are not up for debate. People who are transgender and gender non-binary have legal rights to the guidelines that are proposed in the protocol. They have a legal right not to be harassed. They have a legal right to participate fully in the life of the community and to access services provided by the City of Hamilton without discrimination. So let's take a minute to talk about evidence. The protocol for gender identity and gender expression is supported by current research. Leading internationally renowned scholars in the humanities and social sciences have clearly established that gender identity and gender expression are complex phenomena insufficiently explained or understood through conventional gender binaries that attempt to neatly separate gender difference into two discrete categories. More importantly, the inaccuracy of dividing people into two discrete categories is evidenced by the people who are here today. We do not, and we will not, fit into narrow gender binaries. By supporting the protocol, you can feel confident that you are supporting an evidence-based approach to advancing and protecting the human rights of all Hamiltonians. So let's talk about myths. Opponents to the protocol will spread misinformation suggesting that transgender and gender non-binary people are a threat to women in public washrooms and change rooms. There is absolutely no evidence to support this claim. There is not a single account of a transgender or gender non-binary person harming a woman or a child in a public washroom. There are, however, volumes of accounts of violence enacted against transgender and gender non-binary people for simply using the washroom of their choice. The real concern is transphobia, especially trans misogyny, and that is enacted by cisgender people. The reality is, we are here today to debate and discuss a protocol that simply advances the most fundamental rights to which we are all entitled, the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Trans rights are human rights. Human rights are not up for debate. I urge you to decide in favor of the protocol of gender identity and gender expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Are there any questions for the presenter? Michelle, sorry, one question. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes.
Here to listen, and I want to be clear that I am also supportive of the protocol, but I did have a difficult conversation with my daughter, who's very progressive as well, and she's the one that put the scenario put forward to me, that when she's in the washroom taking a shower, that she'd feel, and it's not about harm, so let's be clear, it's perception or awkwardness. I want to make that clear, and I agree with your comments. But she would feel very, very uncomfortable taking a shower in that open environment. How do I respond to my daughter in that situation?
Oh, thank you, Whitehead, for asking the question. I am also a parent and a resident of the Hamilton community, and I have 2 small children, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And if my 4-year-old were to raise that concern with me, actually, my 4-year-old would not raise that concern with me, because I have raised my child to respect people for the identity and expression that they feel in their heart. That's what's important to them. It's not their physical manifestations of their body. My daughter would not feel threatened by the presence of that some bodies in the same changing facility.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it goes to how you choose to raise your children, respectfully.
I want to make it clear, it's not about being threatened or feel threatened. I think it's about awkwardness. So it's a cultural shift. So I guess what you're suggesting then is that we should be raising our children early to indicate to them a biological is not a relevant issue. It's accepting people for who they are.
Accepting people for who they are, and also, I'm not sure if anyone, I'm going to just draw on some recent popular culture, the recent movie Hidden Figures, where there's a telling scene where someone is smashing the sign on the colored only person's washroom. Perhaps we are at a point in history and time where we need to also consider how these social manifestations are creating unnecessary categories and divisions in our community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, there's one further question, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Conley?
Thank you. Just a quick question.
Yes, hi.
You're talking about human rights are not up for debate. I agree with you 1,000%. But human rights is for everyone. You keep talking about the transgender human rights, but human rights are for all of us. There's straight, transgender, homosexual, all of us, right? Mm-hmm. We're under the same umbrella. So I just kind of take a little bit of offense when you keep talking about human rights for one sector of the society, when human rights is for everybody, and we have to respect everybody, human rights, and we have to respect their privacy and their modesty, if they're, and I think you're trying to push one little part of it, which I agree, they should, human rights for everybody. Everybody should have equal human rights. But please don't...
Is this a question for the presenter,
yes.
sir?
Good question. So do you think that all people using washrooms, for instance, have the same rights, or is it just the transgender that have rights? Good question.
I'm sorry, is that a trick question?
No, it's not. Don't say it in your paper here, so I just wanted to see.
I believe firmly that advancing the rights for transgender and gender non-binary folks is advancing human rights for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Conley. Are there any further questions? Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Seeing none.